Okay, The Last of Us TV show is in the books. Let's talk about it real quick. Overall, I thought this was a very solid adaptation of a game that I have loved for pretty much the last 10 years. I'm a big fan of The Last of Us IP, more specifically the first game and not the second one. I don't have venomous hatred for the second game like everyone else does. However, the problems of that second game, I do acknowledge them, and I agree with most of the consensus is that The Last of Us Part 2 is a game of good intentions, but poor and sloppy execution. Like, I understand what that game was going for, it just didn't execute it in the proper way. But we're not talking about The Last of Us 2. We're talking about the HBOMAX adaptation of the first Last of Us game. And like I said, this was a good adaptation of the game. Now, yes, it took some creative liberties. It changed a lot of things around. But overall, it kept what mattered, which was the core essence of The Last of Us story. Episode 1 is basically the first hour of the game with some changes here and there. We get more screen time with Sarah before she dies. We get to see more of her relationship with Joel before everything goes into complete chaos. We see the world through Sarah's eyes, and we grow to like her. We appreciate her. She has a personality. She's got some spunkiness to us. She and Joel clearly have a very close and tight relationship. So that way, when she dies in the midway point of the episode, we feel it. And they did a fantastic job at recreating that first 20 to 30 minutes of the prologue with Joel and Ellie. With Joel and Sarah. I felt it. I liked it. And I also liked the prologue with the two talking heads having a discussion about the quadriceps and discussing the positives and negatives of it. We have Jonathan Hanna from the Mummy series making a nice little cameo, which I liked and appreciated because I like Jonathan Hanna. I like all that stuff. I thought episode 1 was properly done. And of course, once you get past the prologue and into the present day with Joel and Tess meeting up with Marlene and being introduced to Ellie and how everything plays out, thought it played out very, very well. So yeah, the first episode was really well done. And so, as was the second episode, which basically was the focus of Tess's demise. I kind of liked how they handled the death of Tess in episode 2. It's different than how it was in the game. In the game, they make it to this Capitol building with to meet Fireflies, and when they get there, the Fireflies have been murdered. But before that, Tess had gotten bitten by some infected, and she's pretty much on the clock against time. And in episode 1, it was already revealed that Ellie was immune. So pretty much Tess convinces Joel, hey, listen, take Ellie to see Bill. Take her to see Bill. Because Ellie being immune is something that's real and should really be looked into. Of course, this is where Tess has her hero sacrifice. But unlike in the game where they're being attacked by Fedra, they're being attacked by a swarm of infected. And this is where you get this random scene where an infected kind of like mouths Tess before she blows up the entire Capitol building. So that was kind of weird. However, I do like one aspect in which if one infected dies, that will trigger the rest of the infected to pretty much come running in all in one scene. So I kind of like that molecular communication between the infected. It kind of makes everything make sense when you play the games now. So I like that aspect. And I do like episode 2 in terms of the character building. We get more scenes with Tess and Ellie and getting a little bit more into their stories. We have some little development with Joel and Ellie and Joel and Tess. And you got some good action sequences peppered throughout. So yeah, no complaints. Episode 3 is where it deviates greatly from the games, as this is solely focused on Bill, who was one of my favorite characters from the game, and Frank, who is a character who was only referenced in the first game. We actually get to see how Bill and Frank meet. We get to see how their relationship forms. And listen, as an isolated piece of storytelling, episode 3 was really well done. It is a same-sex story done the proper way. These two characters, they're gay, but the show doesn't, spell it out for you. It plays them as real people, and you feel emotion for their relationship. And at the end of it, you want to give both Frank and Bill a hug because they went through so much shit. Especially Bill, who has always been like this lone wolf, reserved, closed-off type of character. Now that he has somebody in his life, he feels like he has a chance to have a life, so to speak, and not be alone. And when Frank is on his deathbed, Bill he doesn't want to go back to being alone. He enjoyed the time he had with Frank, and I love the ending. I love how they handled Bill and Frank. It's a bittersweet ending with these two characters. Now, as a fan of the game, I would have loved for Bill to have his interactions with Joel and Ellie, because when Joel and Ellie meet Bill in the game, that's where a lot of the game's humor comes from. Bill and the interactions he has with Joel and Ellie, or a lot of it is comedic gold. And of course, that I give a lot of credit to W.L. Brown from the game. But in the show, you have Nick Offerman, who played Bill more as a character, and gave him a lot of pathos and a lot of vulnerability, and it was beautifully done. Like, episode 3 is a beautiful episode. It really truly is. And like I said, it's how you do a gay story the right way. You just have the characters. You just say, you don't got to spell it out. You just treat them like real people, and the audience is going to like you for it. And guess what? Episode 3, the audience liked it because it told a good story. Isolated from the rest of the show, yes, but a good story nonetheless. And then episodes 4 and 5 see Ellie and Joel basically being attacked by the Raiders. This is straight out of the game. In the game, it was in Philadelphia, Pittsburgh. In the show, I believe it's Kansas City, if I'm not mistaken. For the most part, it's beat for beat from the game, with changes here and there. In the show, you have this leader played by Melanie Linsky. At first, she came across as pseudo-interesting, and then she devolves into absolutely nothing really all that memorable. You have the character of Perry, who was played by the original voice actor of Tommy, so it was Jeffrey Pierce, so it was cool to see him. We have our introduction to the one and only scene of the bloater at the end of the 5th episode, so that was pretty cool. I like seeing that. What else? Oh yeah, I'm still talking about episodes 4 and 5. We get our introductions to Sam and Henry. If there's one thing with Sam and Henry that I didn't really agree with the show, is that it rushed the relationship between the two and with Ellie and Joel. In the game, it felt more natural, even though it took place over the course of a day. The game made you feel that the 4 of these characters had more of a relationship. In the show, it comes across as really, really overly rushed, and I really don't get the sense of camaraderie that I did in the game. That's not to say the show didn't try, because it did, and it did have some really good scenes, especially when Joel, Ellie, Sam, and Henry are in this underground playpen. Joel and Henry have their bonding period. Ellie and Sam also have their bonding period. So it did capture those little moments. I just think that you could have slowed it down a little bit and not rush through it. Like, you could have easily got a 3rd episode with Sam and Henry to really develop the relationship more. So that way, when the big climax happens and Henry has to kill his brother after he gets infected, it would have meant more. But on that same note, I do like how they added to Henry's character. I like the fact, I kind of like how the leader has like a personal vendetta against Henry, because Henry had given up the leader's brother, and that caused him to be killed. And so I kind of like how there's like a personal vendetta there. Of course, it wasn't really fully explored enough to make it even more interesting, because again, you try cramming in this story into basically one episode in one episode, when you could have gotten one more out of it to really make me care about what you're trying to convey. And yeah, that's a big criticism of the show, is that it sets up interesting things, but then it rushes right through them to get back to the main story. I mean, you could have done more if you would have given Sam and Henry one more episode along with the leader character by Melanie Linsky, to give it more gravitas and more weight, especially when you get to the end of episode 5, where it pretty much goes beat for beat from the game, with a bunch of infected and a bunch of the Raiders attacking Henry and Sam, and this is where the bloater comes into play, and Joel's got the sniper rifle. And there's this one scene where I thought that the Melanie Linsky character was going to spare Henry, because there's chaos all around him, but she chose revenge over common sense, and I thought that was kind of dumb. I thought that was kind of stupid. I think this character could have easily redeemed herself by saying, "Hey, listen, look at what's going on around you. Do we have to do this?" But the show didn't go in that direction. Listen, I understand why, and this is a concept that goes back to The Last of Us Part 2, about the whole cycle of revenge, and how if you keep, and now revenge will just keep coming back around, and you're not going to get no satisfaction out of it, because all you're going to get is an empty victory, and then you're left wondering what's left for you to do. So I get you're using that concept for this episode, for this character. I just think that he could have broke that mold a little bit. But yeah, all that happens, and you get to the final moments, which is basically a beat for beat interpretation of the game, with Henry killing his brother Sam, and then Henry kills himself, and then everyone's all emotional. Now, I think the episode should have ended with Henry killing Sam, and then the next episode starts with the funeral. I think cramming that into one episode, again, you didn't really need that. I would have given it a chance to breathe. I would have given it a week to breathe, and then you open up the next episode with the burial of Sam and Henry. I think it would have been much more effective that way, my opinion, personally. But after that, they get to the whole thing with Tommy and his community, which was nice. It was a nice recreation of how it is in the second game, which is one of my biggest praises for that second game, is how they made Tommy's community so lively and so detailed. And we get a snippet of that in the show, which I really appreciated and I really like. We were introduced to Tommy, who was in the first episode, Gabriel Luna. This episode is where Luna and Joel and Pedro Pascal really get a chance to shine as Joel and Tommy, as the brothers, and it's really good. They have a lot of really good emotional scenes. They take dialogue straight out of the game, where Joel wants to pass off Ellie to Tommy because Joel cannot trust himself to continue with the mission. We see Joel go introspective and how he feels that because he's breaking down, he doesn't feel like he's strong enough to keep protecting this girl. I like all that stuff. And we see that Tommy is reluctant, but he understands where Joel's coming from. I like all that stuff. And of course, it recreates that amazing scene where Joel and Ellie have their heated heart-to-heart, which was done beat for beat perfectly. We also get the character of Maria, who is Tommy's wife. I like the character of Maria. I mean, she has this really weird and confusing line where she tries to compare her community to a commune, and then she calls it a communist community. And yeah, you have no idea what the meaning of the word communist means, because what Maria said, that's not the meaning of communism. Communism is controlled and where they tell you what to do. You're in a democracy, not a communism. You got to learn the difference. Trying to be cute with the words doesn't make you come across as being clever. It makes you come across as being stupid and that you don't know basic definitions. So yeah, that line really confused me, and it made absolutely zero sense. Like, you can't compare a commune to a communist to a communism. It doesn't. They're not the same. But yeah, once Joel and Ellie leave Tommy's ranch after Joel, pretty much is convinced that, listen, he has to finish this through, that's where you get Joel and Ellie being attacked by raiders, and Joel has his near-death experience. This leads to the flashback episode Left Behind that focuses heavily on Ellie and Riley. I thought the episode was actually really well done. It was a nice recreation of the DLC. But I understand that how it can be criticized, because yeah, you're doing this in the middle of the main narrative, especially when you're 2 episodes left from wrapping up this story. And it does play a little bit into the finale, but because especially with Ellie's survivor's guilt, so I'm gonna give it a pass, mainly because I thought Bella Ramsey and Storm Reid did a good job at playing the characters in this episode, and they do have a lot of fun and cute bonding moments. But I think it also would have been nice if you would have intercut it with Ellie also trying to save Joel, like it did in the DLC. Like, I think it would have been better if you would have did it like the DLC, and have certain scenes intercut with one another, just to make just to give the episode much more meaning, instead of just being one elongated flashback with Joel and Ellie playing bookends at the end. I would have done it more like the DLC to give it more grip. Then you have the penultimate episode, which is the introduction of David. This episode I thought was really well done. We get Troy Baker, who voiced Joel, playing the character of James, who was a minor character in the game, who was pretty much David's right-hand man. The actor who played David, I thought, did a phenomenal job. He's no Nolan North, but he was really good and very compelling. And I like the direction that they went with David. They made him more or less as a preacher who was pretty much elected to be the leader of his community. And since everything's very scarce, he kind of made the decision that in order for them to survive, they got to resort to baser lower instincts, which is why he unknowingly has made them all into cannibals. Now, the entire community doesn't crave human flesh because it's not that way in the game, but you get the idea that David has been manipulating these people into thinking that what they're eating is that has manipulated these people in sort of a way, and they view him almost as like a Charles Manson type of figure. Like, they pretty much come to him for almost everything. So I like all that. I also like seeing David's community actually look like a community. In the game, it's very abandoned, and we get the sense that the only people there are just David's army, but we actually get to see him interact with actual people living in his community. We get to see some relationships that he has within his community. So I like all that. They recreated the relationship that he wants to form with Ellie. We get tidbits of him basically wanting to have some sort of insidious relationship with her. This, of course, leads to a almost near replication of the scene they have in the burning restaurant, and Ellie going absolutely apeshit on David after he tries to do something after he basically tries to rape her, and she goes postal and just kills him. And you have that beautiful recreation of Joel comforting Ellie. In the game, it was handled so much better, mainly because Joel stops her in mid-motion, and her adrenaline is so spiked that she doesn't know what's going on. In the show, after she already kills David, you see her walking out of the restaurant. She's already in a trance, in a daze, and Joel tries to comfort her, and then she goes and she like loses it a little bit. The game is handled much more differently because Joel's stopping her at the height of panic, as opposed to the show where she's calmed down a little bit. That's just like a little nitpick. I just like how it's handled better in the game. And then you get to the last episode, which is basically a recreation of the last hour of the game, with Joel and Ellie trekking through Salt Lake City, eventually getting to the Firefly base, and Joel's rampage to the hospital to save Ellie, because the only way to extract this cure from Ellie, because it's in her brain, basically she basically has to die. And being that Joel has grown to view Ellie as his daughter, he can't let that happen. And of course, it leads to the question: do you think what Joel did was right? Do you think Joel lying to Ellie was the right thing or the wrong thing? Do you think that Joel's actions were selfish or selfless? And do you think that lying to it's the same question that was brought up in the game is brought up in this, and yeah, it's all open to interpretation. Me personally, I think Joel acted the way any human would act. He acted for his own self-interest. At this point, he doesn't care about a cure because he's grown to love this girl as a daughter. In his mind, having her die would be like losing Sarah all over again. Even it is for a good cause. His parental instincts cannot allow something like that to happen. So I'm trying to come at it more or less from a glass half full point of view, and basically chopping it down to, as a human, as a father, what would you do? Or as a parent in general, what would you do? The same question that's raised in the game is raised at the end of this episode, and it's done really, really well. Nice recreations, and I love it. And I also like the opening prologue with Ashley Johnson, the original voice of Ellie, playing Ellie's mother, Anna. We get to see her and Marlene and their relationship, and we get hints that they had a relationship for a long time. And we also see Marlene, doing a sacrifice kill on Anna, which adds to Marlene's conflictedness of what she wants to do with Ellie. Because you can tell that Marlene, she cares about Ellie as a daughter. She does not want to kill Ellie, but if it's for a greater good, then she's going to do it. And she comes across from the point of view as, say we don't do this, and Ellie, what would happen to Ellie when you die? What's to say she won't get killed by clickers? What's to say she won't be raped by raiders or have something much worse happen to her? She raises the question of, that's not your decision to make, and Joel counteracts with, it ain't your decision, it ain't your choice to choose for her what she should do. And I like that debate, handled very, very well. So yeah, and like in the game, it ends with them going to Tommy's town. It ends with Ellie questioning Joel. Hey, listen, did you tell me what the Fireflies is true? Did they really have more people who are immune and still couldn't find a cure? Is what you're telling me the truth? Of course, we all know that Joel assures her, And from Ellie's reaction, it kind of leaves it up to the viewer as to whether or not she's buying what he's saying. And I think it kind of plays out the same way with Bella Ramsey's performance as well. So yeah, after all that, I give the first season of The Last of Us a solid 8 out of 10. This is a damn good adaptation of a video game, one of the better adaptations of a video game. Yes, it takes a lot of creative liberties and it makes a lot of changes, and as a fan, I would have liked to have seen certain aspects remain unchanged, but as an overall package, this was a damn good show, a damn solid adaptation, and I highly give my recommendations for the first season of The Last of Us 8 out of 10. Let me know your thoughts in the comment sections down below. Like the video and subscribe, and I'll check you back next time for more. Oh, and just to make a brief little addendum, I think the acting all throughout this show was really well done. Pedro Pascal was really damn good as Joel. Bella Ramsey, she had moments where she can come across as a little too mean or a little too cringe as Ellie. And then she had moments, especially the more calm down moments, where she actually embraced Elliot, where she actually was embodying Elliot as the character. I think what a lot of people should realize that Ellie is not this snarky person because she's naturally that snarky person. She's that snarky person as a way to pretty much hide her insecurities, as a way to hide her fears. I don't think the show fully understood that in a lot of aspects. I think it did in some, and it did in others. But overall, I thought Bella Ramsey was good. I wouldn't say she was the greatest thing as Ellie. I think her praise is really overhyped, but she was good. She did a good job. And that goes for the rest of the cast. Like the actress who played Henry and Sam, I thought they did well. The actress who played Tess, she did very well. Like every actor played their role really, really well. And for this show, that's the only thing I ask, is that you put in good and earnest performances, and everyone all across the board, they did their job. And no complaints whatsoever.